First, this is an enrichment video. An enrichment video is one that is not required. It is not going to hurt your grade if you do not try this, but I wanted to give you the instruction in case you did want to go a little further, did want to try a little more, or were interested in the subject. So what we're talking about today is cross-hatching, stippling, and basically adding value with a pen. We are using Sharpie pens. There are two different kinds of Sharpie pens. There's the fine point, two that we have here. The fine point, which has a rounded cap, so you can see the round, these are a little bit thicker. And then the extra fine. The extra fine, the caps are flat on top, and that's how you can kind of tell them apart. But some parts of your project you might want to use the fine, but for cross-hatching and stippling, we're going to be using the extra fine. All right, adding value to a drawing makes it look a little bit more 3D. There's a couple ways that we can do it with pen. Now, once we put the pen on there, it's permanent. We can't smooth it out. So one way is cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is when you make lines going in one direction and then lines going in a different direction. The more directions you go, the darker the value that you're going to make. So if you wanted a really dark spot, then you would keep cross-hatching lines in different directions over and over and over again. And that makes it lighter and darker. So we can see this end's a little lighter, and then it's a little darker as we go. We could keep going. So cross-hatching I like because you can also use it to show the shape or the form of something. So if you have a ball or a sphere, instead of just doing cross-hatching, I can also make the lines kind of curved as I shade it, and this will help me to know that the form is curved. So all my lines are just very gently curved as I add my shading on one side and go in different directions with the pen. All right, so that's cross-hatching. Another idea is stippling. Now, stippling you can try for small areas, but with our setup here, stippling takes a lot of time, so it's not something I would do for your entire project. With the same idea of a sphere here, stippling uses little dots. The more dots you put, the darker the value. The less dots, the lighter the value. So if I want to make the bottom look a little darker, I have to add more dots. So I'm just going up and down, up and down, and up and down. This is kind of fun, gives it a different feel or a different texture than lines or shading in other ways, but it just takes a lot of time. So I would try it in small areas. So the more dots, the darker the value. Now there's other things you can try too. Instead of cross-hatching the lines, you can just do parallel lines. So I could do lines that are similar, and then the closer together I put the lines, the darker the value. The further apart I put the lines, the lighter the value. So there's lots of different ways you can experiment with this. Stippling works with dots, but you could try it with other things too. You could try it with numbers, like the more numbers you put, the closer they are together, it would make a darker value. So the further apart they are, the lighter the value. The closer together they are, the darker the value. So there's different ways to do it. So here's just a few ways to add some value to your drawings, and you can think about some different areas where you might want to add some shading. So if we come back to my example here, I've done it in a few areas. So first, the back of the neck here, I've added a little bit of parallel lines. I've done a little bit of cross-hatching to give the idea of the shirt. I've done some cross-hatching in here. I didn't really use stippling because of time, but you can see again cross-hatching up here in the smoke and on the smokestack. I've added some dark values in around the strawberries to define them, and around the stars to define those. I've added a little bit of parallel lines here to add some shading around the eye. So just a few subtle areas. We don't need a ton of it in this project, but a few areas will look really nice.